What happens when a simple interview question triggers a chain reaction that leads to one of the most shocking walk-offs in daytime television history? Today we're diving into the explosive moment when former Miss USA Crystle Stewart stormed off the Kelly Clarkson show, leaving millions of viewers stunned and Kelly herself scrambling to salvage what was supposed to be a lighthearted conversation. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts, because trust me, you're going to have plenty to say about this one. The atmosphere in the studio seemed perfectly normal as Kelly Clarkson welcomed her guest with her trademark warm smile. Crystle Stewart, the accomplished former Miss USA turned entrepreneur, settled into the familiar burgundy chair across from Kelly's desk, appearing relaxed and ready for what both women expected to be a standard promotional interview. The audience was buzzing with their usual enthusiasm, completely unaware that they were about to witness television history in the making. Kelly began with her characteristic enthusiasm, her voice carrying that familiar blend of genuine curiosity and professional polish that had made her show such a success. Crystle, it's so wonderful having you here today. I have to say, watching your journey from Miss USA to building your own empire in the beauty industry has been absolutely inspiring. But I'm curious about something that I think a lot of our viewers would love to know more about. Crystle's posture straightened slightly, a subtle shift that might have gone unnoticed by the casual observer. But there was something in her expression that suggested she was already on guard. Thank you for having me, Kelly. I'm always happy to share my story and hopefully inspire other women to chase their dreams, no matter how impossible they might seem. The response was polished, professional, exactly what you'd expect from someone who had spent years in the public eye. But Kelly's next question would prove to be the spark that ignited an unexpected firestorm. Now, I know this might be a sensitive topic, but there's been some discussion online about your time as Miss USA and some of the challenges you faced during that year. Some people have suggested that the organization wasn't as supportive as they could have been, particularly when it came to certain opportunities that maybe didn't materialize the way you expected them to. The change in Crystle's demeanor was immediate and unmistakable. Her shoulders tensed, her smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but there was now a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there seconds before. The studio audience, still oblivious to the shift in energy, continued their gentle murmur of conversation. But those paying close attention could sense that something had fundamentally changed in the dynamic between host and guest. Kelly, I think there might be some misconceptions about my experience that need to be addressed, Crystle replied, her voice maintaining its professional tone but with an underlying edge that was impossible to miss. The Miss USA organization provided me with incredible opportunities, and I'm grateful for my time representing the country. However, I think it's important to be accurate about the facts rather than repeating speculation that might not have any basis in reality. Kelly, to her credit, seemed to recognize that she had touched a nerve, but rather than backing down, she pressed forward with the kind of journalistic instinct that had served her well throughout her career. Of course, and I appreciate you wanting to set the record straight. But there were some pretty specific reports about contracts that were supposed to happen, endorsement deals that fell through, and questions about whether certain decisions were made that might have limited your ability to maximize your platform during that year. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Crystle's expression hardened further. Her hands, which had been resting casually in her lap, now gripped the arms of her chair with a tension that was becoming increasingly visible to both the studio audience and the cameras capturing every moment. I'm going to stop you right there, Kelly Crystle said, her voice now carrying a sharpness that cut through the studio like a blade. I came here today to talk about my current projects, my business ventures, and the positive impact I'm trying to make in the world. I did not come here to relitigate old gossip or to validate rumors that have been circulating without any factual basis whatsoever. The studio audience had fallen completely silent now, sensing the tension that was crackling between the two women like electricity before a storm. Kelly's expression showed a mixture of surprise and determination as she realized that what had started as a routine interview question had escalated into something far more confrontational than anyone had anticipated. Crystle, I completely understand your position, and I respect that you want to focus on your current work, Kelly responded, her voice still warm but with a note of professional persistence. But I think our viewers would appreciate some clarity on these issues, especially since they've been part of the public conversation. You have the opportunity here to address them directly and put any misconceptions to rest once and for all. What happened next would become one of the most talked about moments in recent television history, as Crystle Stewart's response would set in motion a series of events that no one in that studio could have predicted. Crystle's eyes flashed with an intensity that made it clear she was done playing the role of the gracious guest. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a weight that seemed to fill every corner of the studio, demanding attention from everyone present. You know what, Kelly? I find it really interesting that you're framing this as giving me an opportunity to clear things up. when what you're actually doing is perpetuating exactly the kind of narrative that has been used to undermine successful women for decades. You're taking unsubstantiated rumors and presenting them as if they deserve serious consideration. As if my word alone isn't enough to put these ridiculous claims to rest. Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly, clearly taken aback by the directness and force of Crystle's response. The host shifted in her chair, her professional training kicking in as she tried to navigate what was rapidly becoming uncharted territory. For her typically upbeat show, "I hear what you're saying, Crystle, and I certainly don't want to perpetuate anything that isn't true," Kelly replied, her voice carrying a note of defensiveness that wasn't usually present in her interviews. But when there are multiple sources reporting similar information, and when these stories have gained traction in the media, I think it's fair to ask about them. That's what journalism is about, right? Asking the tough questions so that the truth can come out. The word journalism seemed to strike Crystle like a physical blow, and her reaction was immediate and fierce. She leaned forward in her chair, her entire body language shifting from defensive to openly confrontational. Journalism. Crystle's voice rose just enough to carry throughout the silent studio, every word dripping with incredulity. Is that what we're calling this? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks a lot more like tabloid sensationalism dressed up in a friendly interview format. Real journalism would have involved reaching out to me beforehand, fact-checking these so-called multiple sources, and actually investigating whether there was any truth to these stories before ambushing me with them on live television. The accusation of ambush hung in the air like smoke, and Kelly's face showed a flash of genuine anger for the first time since the interview began. Her professional composure, which had been her shield throughout countless difficult interviews, began to show cracks. "Now hold on just a minute," Kelly said, her voice carrying a firmness that her regular viewers rarely heard. "Nobody ambushed anybody here. These are legitimate questions about your public career, and if you didn't want to discuss your time as Miss USA, your team should have made that clear when we were planning this interview. You can't come on a talk show and expect to only discuss the topics that make you comfortable." Crystle's laugh was sharp and bitter, cutting through the tension like a knife through silk. "Oh, so now it's my fault for not anticipating that you would choose to focus on gossip and speculation instead of my actual accomplishments. Let me ask you something, Kelly. When you have male entrepreneurs on this show, do you spend time questioning them about old rumors and asking them to defend themselves against unsubstantiated claims? Or do you focus on their current success and the value they're bringing to the world?" The question hit its mark with surgical precision, and Kelly's face flushed slightly as she processed the implication behind Crystle's words. The studio audience, which had been silent throughout this exchange, seemed to collectively hold its breath as they waited to see how their beloved host would respond to such a direct challenge. "That's not fair, and you know it," Kelly shot back, her voice now carrying clear frustration. "I ask tough questions of everyone who comes on this show, regardless of their gender. The difference is that most guests understand that addressing controversies head-on is better than avoiding them, because avoiding them just makes people think there's something to hide." The implication that Crystle might be hiding something was like throwing gasoline on an already blazing fire. Crystle's face transformed, her professional mask slipping away entirely to reveal raw anger and indignation. Something to hide. Crystle's voice was incredulous, each word carefully enunciated as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "Kelly, let me be crystal clear about something. I have built a multi-million-dollar business from the ground up. I have created opportunities for hundreds of women in an industry that desperately needed more diversity and representation. I have used my platform to advocate for causes that matter, to lift up other women, and to make a real difference in the world. And you want to sit here and suggest that I'm hiding something because I refuse to dignify baseless gossip with a response." Kelly, perhaps realizing that the interview had spiraled far beyond anything she had intended, tried to regain control of the situation. "Crystle, I think we might be talking past each other here. All I was trying to do was give you a chance to tell your side of the story. If these reports are wrong, then saying so clearly would put an end to them once and for all." But Crystle was beyond the point of accepting olive branches. Her anger had reached a boiling point, and her next words would push the confrontation past the point of no return. "My side of the story." Crystle's voice was now filled with a dangerous quiet that was somehow more intimidating than if she had been shouting. "Kelly, here's my side of the story. I don't owe you, or your viewers, or anyone else, a detailed explanation of every aspect of my personal and professional life just because some people have chosen to spread rumors. The fact that you think I do tells me everything I need to know about how this conversation is going to go. And frankly, I'm not interested in participating in this kind of character assassination disguised as entertainment." The accusation of character assassination hit Kelly like a slap across the face, and for a moment, the host seemed genuinely stunned into silence. When she found her voice again, it carried a level of indignation that matched Crystle's own. "Character assassination? Are you serious right now?" Kelly's voice rose slightly, her carefully maintained composure finally beginning to crack under the pressure. I have built my entire career on treating my guests with respect and dignity. I have never, not once, set out to tear someone down or damage their reputation. The fact that you would even suggest that is not only insulting, it's completely unfair. Crystle's response was immediate and devastating. Unfair? You want to talk about unfair? What's unfair is inviting someone onto your show under the pretense of discussing their current work and then blindsiding them with questions designed to drag them back into controversies they've already moved past. What's unfair is treating unverified gossip as if it deserves the same weight as actual facts. What's unfair is using your platform to legitimize rumors that have absolutely no basis in reality. The words came out in a torrent, each one carefully chosen for maximum impact. Kelly's face showed a mixture of shock and growing anger as she processed what felt like a systematic dismantling of her professional integrity. You know what, Crystle? I think you're being incredibly defensive about questions that any public figure should be prepared to answer, Kelly fired back, her voice now carrying a sharp edge that her regular audience had never heard before. If you can't handle basic scrutiny about your public career, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. This is how the media works, and acting like you're above it just makes you look entitled and out of touch. The word entitled seemed to hit Crystle like a physical blow, and her reaction was swift and fierce. She sat up straighter in her chair, her entire body radiating an energy that suggested she was barely containing herself. Entitled. Crystle's voice was dangerously quiet now, each word dripping with controlled fury. Kelly, let me tell you what entitled looks like. Entitled is thinking that you have the right to demand explanations from me about every rumor and piece of gossip that has ever been written about me. Entitled is believing that your curiosity about my personal business somehow trumps my right to privacy and dignity. Entitled is assuming that because I'm a public figure, I owe you access to every aspect of my life, including the parts that have nothing to do with why I'm here today. Kelly's face was now flushed with anger, and her next words would prove to be the final straw that pushed this confrontation beyond the point of no return. Privacy and dignity. Give me a break, Crystle. You've built your entire brand on your public persona. You've used your Miss USA title to launch your business. You've leveraged your celebrity status for endorsements and partnerships. And you've made millions of dollars off of being a public figure. You don't get to pick and choose which parts of that public life you want to discuss when it's convenient for you. The studio had fallen into a silence so complete that the hum of the cameras seemed deafeningly loud. Crystle stared at Kelly for a long moment, her expression cycling through disbelief, hurt, and finally settling on cold determination. You know what, Kelly? You're absolutely right about one thing. I do get to pick and choose. I get to decide what I will and won't discuss, what questions I will and won't answer, and what treatment I will and won't accept. And right now, I'm choosing not to accept this. Kelly seemed to realize that she had pushed too far, and her voice took on a slightly conciliatory tone, though the damage was clearly already done. Look, Crystle, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we take a step back and focus on your current projects? I'd love to hear about your latest business ventures and what you're working on now. But Crystle was already shaking her head, a bitter smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Oh, now you want to talk about my current projects? After you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to drag me through the mud over things that happened years ago. After you've questioned my integrity, called me defensive and entitled, and basically accused me of being a hypocrite for wanting to control my own narrative. The attempt at de-escalation had clearly failed, and Kelly's frustration was now plainly visible on her face. I never called you any of those things directly, and you know it. You're putting words in my mouth and twisting everything I've said to make me look like the villain here. Crystle's laugh was sharp and humorless. I don't need to twist anything, Kelly. Your words speak for themselves. And the fact that you think I'm trying to make you look like a villain just shows how completely you've missed the point of everything I've been trying to tell you. The tension in the studio was now so thick it was almost suffocating. The audience sat in stunned silence, clearly uncomfortable with the level of hostility they were witnessing between two women they had expected to see having a friendly conversation. Kelly made one last desperate attempt to salvage the interview. Crystle, I think we're both getting a little heated here. This doesn't have to end badly. We're both professional women who respect each other, and I think if we just take a breath and reset, we can have a productive conversation about the things you actually want to discuss. But Crystle was already standing up, her movements deliberate and final. The microphone clipped to her jacket created a small feedback squeal as she moved, the sound seeming to underscore the finality of her decision. No, Kelly, we can't reset, because the damage is already done. You've made it clear what you think of me, and what you think I owe you and your audience. You've shown me exactly who you are and how you approach these conversations. And I've decided that I don't need to subject myself to any more of it. Kelly's face went pale as she realized that Crystle was actually preparing to leave. The host stood up quickly, her chair rolling back as she moved, clearly panicking at the thought of a guest walking off her show on live television. "Please, let's not do this. Sit back down and let's work this out like adults. Walking off isn't going to solve anything, and it's just going to create more drama and speculation, which is the last thing either of us wants." But Crystle was already reaching for her purse, her movements sharp and decisive. When she turned back to face Kelly, her expression was one of complete resolve mixed with barely contained fury. "You know what, Kelly? You're wrong about that too. Walking off is going to solve exactly one thing. It's going to remove me from a situation where I'm being disrespected and treated like some kind of reality show villain instead of the accomplished businesswoman that I am. As for creating drama and speculation, I think you've already taken care of that part pretty thoroughly." The studio audience was now visibly uncomfortable, some people shifting in their seats, others whispering to their neighbors, all of them clearly unsure whether they should be witnessing this level of personal conflict between two public figures. Kelly's voice took on a pleading quality that was completely foreign to her usual confident demeanor. "Crystle, you're making a huge mistake here. This is going to follow you everywhere. People are going to ask why you walked off, what you were trying to hide, why you couldn't handle a few simple questions. Is that really the narrative you want out there?" The threat, whether intended or not, was unmistakable, and Crystle's reaction was swift and devastating. She turned back to face Kelly fully, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made several audience members actually lean back in their seats. "Are you threatening me right now, Kelly? Because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're saying that if I don't sit here and let you continue to badger me with questions I've already said I won't answer, you're going to make sure that my walking off becomes an even bigger story than whatever gossip you were trying to get me to address in the first place." Kelly's face flushed red as she realized how her words had sounded. "That's not what I meant at all, and you know it. I was trying to help you understand how this is going to look to people watching at home. How this is going to look." Crystle's voice rose to a level that carried clearly throughout the studio, causing the camera operators to adjust their equipment to capture her response. "Let me tell you how this is going to look, Kelly. It's going to look like a successful black woman refused to be disrespected on national television. It's going to look like someone who has worked too hard and accomplished too much to sit quietly while being subjected to a hostile interrogation disguised as an interview. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that being the narrative." The racial element that Crystle had introduced into the confrontation seemed to catch Kelly completely off guard, and for a moment the host appeared to be at a complete loss for words. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaky and uncertain. "Crystle, that's not fair. This has nothing to do with race, and bringing that into it is completely inappropriate. I treat all of my guests the same way, regardless of their background." Crystle's laugh was bitter and knowing. "Oh, Kelly, the fact that you think you can dismiss the racial dynamics at play here just by saying they don't exist shows exactly how naive you are about the realities of being a black woman in the public. But you know what? I don't have time to educate you about something you should already understand if you're going to be interviewing people who don't look like you." The studio had fallen into a silence so complete that the sound of Crystle removing her microphone seemed to echo through the space. The small clip made a sharp clicking sound as she detached it from her jacket, and she placed it carefully on the arm of the chair she had been sitting in just moments before. "This interview is over," Crystle announced, her voice carrying a finality that left no room for argument. "I came here to talk about my business, my success, and the positive impact I'm trying to make in the world. Instead, I was subjected to exactly the kind of treatment that makes it clear why so many successful women, particularly women of color, are reluctant to put themselves in these situations." Kelly made one final, desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Crystle, please, just give me one more chance. Let's start over. I promise we can focus entirely on your current work and your future plans. No more questions about the past, no more anything that makes you uncomfortable. Just a conversation between two successful women about the amazing things you're doing now." For just a moment, Crystle paused, and there was something in her expression that suggested she might be considering the offer. But then her face hardened again, and she shook her head with decisive finality. "No, Kelly, some things can't be taken back, and some damage can't be undone. You've shown me who you are and how you approach these conversations, and I've seen enough. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the last 15 minutes didn't happen just so you can salvage your show." With that, Crystle turned and began walking toward the exit, her heels clicking against the studio floor with each determined step. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the stunned silence that had fallen over the entire studio. Kelly stood frozen behind her desk, clearly in shock at what had just transpired. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the unprecedented scene. As Crystle Stewart walked off the Kelly Clarkson show, leaving behind a host scrambling to figure out how to fill the remaining time and an audience that had just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in recent television history. The studio doors closed behind Crystle with a definitive thud that seemed to punctuate the end of what had started as a routine interview and had transformed into a moment that would be talked about, analyzed, and debated for years to come. That was the moment when a simple question about the past ignited a firestorm that neither woman could have predicted, leading to one of the most shocking walk-offs ever captured on live television. What do you think about Crystle's decision to walk off? Was she justified in her response, or did she overreact to Kelly's questions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories like this one.